Rick Harrison finally speaks up and tells us about the 5 worst workers who ever worked at his famous gold and silver pawn shop. And the truth is more crazy than any old treasure they've ever bought or sold. From family fights to secret arguments, Rick tells us about the drama that TV viewers never got to see. One worker was so lazy that the shop almost lost millions of dollars, while another worker was secretly telling their competitors what was happening. Did Rick really put his own son on this list? Keep watching to find out who made it onto Rick Harrison's worst Pawn Stars workers list. Corey Big Hoss Harrison. The first person we're talking about is Corey Harrison, who people call Big Hoss. It's pretty crazy, but Big Hoss is Rick Harrison's son. But Rick thinks he's one of his worst workers because of several different reasons. Corey started working at the gold and silver pawn shop when he was just 9 years old and slowly worked his way up to being the manager of daily work. Now he watches over about 30 workers and takes care of the stuff they buy and sell. Hey, he also buys more stuff than the other people on the show. As the Pawn Stars show kept going, Corey quickly became the main face of the shop's everyday work, mostly saying hello to customers, making deals, and deciding whether to buy expensive things. Rick usually came in to help with bigger items or things from history. But after a while, this setup caused natural fighting between Rick and Corey, which led to major, shocking fights. It all started around season 6 when Corey got really fed up with his father, Kay, and he said he wanted a 10% piece of the business if his father wanted him to stay working at the shop for a long time. This wasn't really surprising since Corey was doing a lot of work for his father and was supposed to take over the pawn shop someday. But Rick wasn't ready to give up so much control, so he offered just 5% instead. Corey finally said yes to this deal, hoping that it would get bigger later on. Even after they made this deal, when Richard Benjamin Harrison died, Rick's father and Corey's grandfather, Kay, clearly left Corey out of getting any of his stuff, Kay giving all the ownership just to Rick. This made the fight between father and son even worse, making Corey one of his worst workers on Pawn Stars, even though Rick and Corey were already having a tense relationship. It got even worse because Rick was always picking on his son. On many episodes, Rick questioned whether Corey was making good buying choices since Corey sometimes bought things without asking him first or spent more money than he was supposed to. In the Sink or Sell episode, Corey bought a boat even though Rick has a rule against buying boats without checking them out first. And then in Hot Air Buffoon, Corey spent $38,000 on a hot air balloon, even though the rule says all purchases over $10,000 need Rick's okay first. There were many other times like these where Rick warned Corey about being too trusting or paying too much money, while Corey kept fighting back, trying to prove that he could run the business his own way. Rick never really let him have full control, and there were many times that Corey said he would leave the shop for good unless he got more ownership. Even fans noticed that Corey looked miserable on the show sometimes. One time, Rick and Chumlee even went to Disneyland without Corey, showing how bad their relationship had gotten. Rick Harrison also thinks Corey is one of his worst workers because he has been mixed up in a lot of trouble. In 2011, Corey was arrested at Murray Saloon after a fight when he pushed a police officer and a security guard during a bar argument. But he was let go the next day once he was sober. But this was not the only time Corey got in trouble with the law while drunk. In 2023, he was arrested again in Las Vegas while driving drunk. He failed all his sobriety tests and had to spend the night in jail. Corey also has bad luck with getting married. He married his high school girlfriend Charlene in 2009, but by 2015, they got divorced. The second time, he married Karina Kiki Harrison in 2017, but they got divorced a year later even though they had a son together. Surprisingly, this isn't the only worker that Rick Harrison has a problem with. The next one is one of the main owners, who is surprisingly his mother, Joanne Harrison. Joanne Harrison started the original pawn shop with her husband, Rich Harrison, in Las Vegas in 1981, right from the beginning. She owned 51% of the pawn shop, which later became the shop that we see on Pawn Stars, while Richard owned 49%. Joanne Harrison never actually showed up on Pawn Stars, but she had an important job in the business. She was one of the people who started the gold and silver pawn shop. She also owned other businesses like Harrison Properties and Jorick, where she owned 100% of everything. Rick's relationship with his mother was friendly, but still businesslike. But everything changed when she became one of Rick Harrison's worst workers on Pawn Stars. Richard Harrison died in 2018, and his whole estate was left to Rick Harrison to take care of. By 2022, Joanne Harrison took her son Rick to court, along with the related businesses, including the pawn shop. It's no wonder they have a bad relationship now. According to Joanne, she was forced into signing over her 51% ownership share around 2000 to 2001 while she was still getting better from being in a coma. She also said that she didn't understand what she was signing. Joanne said that Rick wouldn't show her clear money records, including around $500,000 in silver and $100,000 in cash that her husband had apparently saved up before he died. But after 2018, she got Richard's 49% share and said that Rick cut down her monthly payments from $25,000 down to $20,000. Then he stopped paying her by 2020, leaving her without enough money, even though she had major medical bills she was dealing with. Another thing she said was that they got a $3 million loan using her own stuff as backup without her knowing about it or saying it was okay. The situation got worse in March 2022 when she asked for a temporary restraining order to stop Rick from changing her payment amounts again. Her lawyer said that she was in immediate danger of medical harm if the payments were stopped again, and Rick stopping her payments could be dangerous given her age. Rick was completely shocked by the lawsuit, telling everyone that he didn't know about the lawsuit and restraining order until they became public news. He also said that the claims were false and was worried that his mother was being tricked by other people who weren't looking out for her best interests. Through his spokesperson, Rick said that he had been trying to reach his mother, but he couldn't get in touch with her. For Rick, this lawsuit was a major blow to him personally because he felt betrayed by his mother. This has caused a break between mother and son, making her one of the worst workers he has. The lawsuit is not over, and no one knows how it will end, but this is still a difficult situation between the two. But another shocking worker that Rick has a problem with is Chumlee, Corey's closest friend, Austin Chumlee Russell. Austin Lee Russell, who many Pawn Stars fans know as Chumlee, started working at the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas 5 years before Pawn Stars started in 2009. He's a childhood friend of Corey's and started behind the counter testing items, loading stuff, and writing tickets for things they bought on the show. Chumlee was pretty much the funny guy and was usually shown as the lovable, silly person because of his clumsy behavior and low-key pranks. Even though he was meant to be the funny sidekick, he sometimes showed real knowledge, especially in buying pinball machines, sneakers, video games, and collectibles. Some episodes where he really stood out include Pinball Wizards and Honest Abe, when the cameras weren't rolling. Started Chumlee's Candy on the BLV, where he sold fun candies, jerky, toothpicks, and items with his name on them. His popularity made him a money-making person within the Pawn Stars world. Despite all of these things, Chumlee is still one of the worst workers for Rick Harrison on Pawn Stars, even if Chumlee is a fan favorite. Rick has a problem with how hard he works and how professional he acts. That's because Chumlee is usually not paying attention when the cameras aren't rolling. He usually skips the regular shop hours and treats. The job is less important, while the show and his celebrity status comes first. As one can expect, this doesn't go well with Rick, who takes his shop very seriously. The fact that Chumlee is always goofing around on the show also makes Rick very annoyed because he's normally a serious person. Rick saw Chumlee's celebrity, special treatment, and pay as hurting the real business operations. He always did a lazy job, as many fans have said, which Rick found very ridiculous. Over time, this made him one of the worst workers on the show. After all, who needs a worker that doesn't do his job well? Another reason why Chumlee is one of the worst workers on the show is the major scandal that he was mixed up in, which was the final straw for Rick Harrison. Chumlee's biggest controversy came in March 2016 when Las Vegas police searched his home as part of an unrelated sexual assault investigation. They found methamphetamine, traces of other drugs, and one firearm, many of which weren't registered. The raid even found a chum chum room which had a stripper pole and other adult stuff. At first, he faced 19 serious drug charges and 1 serious weapons charge. While not charged in the assault case, Chumlee accepted a plea deal and was found guilty of gun possession, which is a serious crime, and attempted drug possession, a smaller crime. He was sentenced to 3 years probation, required counseling, and had to give up his drugs and weapons. The serious conviction was dropped when he finished everything in 2019. Rick had said that he didn't know the details and had no idea what Chumlee was doing behind the scenes, but that they would support him. Despite saying this, there's no doubt that he was upset by this scandal, especially since it had a bad effect on the show and the shop. The scandal happened when the show was at its most popular, but Rick didn't fire him, said even if he was one of the worst workers, he still stayed on the show. This is more than what we can say about the next worker that got on Rick's bad side, Olivia Black. Olivia Black is another worker that Rick saw as one of his worst, especially since she had a bad impact on the show. Born Dean Nicole Sierra, and also known by the name Belladonna, Olivia was hired as a night shift worker in season 5, working alongside Chumlee, who taught her the job. She showed up in about 13 episodes alone, handling customer talks, testing items, and writing tickets for things they bought during the night shift. She never actually had any on-camera fights with Rick, and was liked for her charm and work ethic. Rick Harrison later explained that he never fired her, but a shocking scandal happened which caused her to leave the show. It started in 2012 when the National Enquirer published pictures from Olivia's past as a suicide girl's nude model where she posed under the name Bella. Actually, her co-workers, including Rick, knew about her modeling history, but the producers thought that it went against the show's image. Because of this, they fired her. 4 days after she was fired, Olivia posed for Suicide Girls again. She also left the shop off camera after working behind the counter while not being part of the TV cast. Olivia got into a fight with Rick over this because she felt like the production team shouldn't have fired her. After all, she came to work in the pawn shop and not on the show. But Rick said that he didn't exactly fire her, but the production team did. He defended that her personal life was her own business and that she was well liked in the shop. Even if he defended her, he didn't try to keep her or stand against the production team for her. Olivia thought about taking legal action against Left Field Pictures and called her firing unfair. She also argued that when male personalities have nude or suggestive backgrounds, they face less trouble than women in the same situation. Another argument was that she was hired to work in the shop and not to be a celebrity, so she felt like the production team had no right to kick her out of the show. She tried to ask for her job back, but she couldn't convince the producers. Eventually, she had to leave the show. The negative impact that she had on the show made her one of the worst workers on Pawn Stars to Rick. Rick wasn't happy about the scandal, and neither were the fans. Many viewers felt like her firing was unfair. There were many social media posts and petitions which showed that they were frustrated over the show's decision to remove her because of what they felt was damaging to the image. Many fans also said that she was one of the best reasons to watch. some episodes, and so they didn't understand why Rick didn't fight harder for her to stay on the show. Still, she didn't have as many big, blown-out fights with Rick the way Corey and Chumlee did. After the show was over, she embraced alternative modeling and LGBTQ advocacy, working as a cosplayer, Twitch streamer, and producer. She also started a positive lifestyle site with her partner, Chef Maria Plaza. Rick never said anything about Olivia after she left. But there was another worker that he had a problem with, which was the security guard working at the pawn shop, Cantuan Andy Austin. Antoine Austin, who was nicknamed Andy, was the security guard for the gold and silver pawn shop, although he was mostly seen in the background. He did important jobs like greeting customers, walking unruly customers off the property, helping move large items, and sometimes he sold shop-branded t-shirts when needed. One of the episodes where he stood out a lot was in Teach's Pet in Season 4, when Rick told viewers that Antoine had been with the shop for 3 years. In that episode, Chumlee taught him how to properly negotiate prices and identify real gold. Then Antoine also taught Chumlee in the security episode when Chumlee filled in at the door. Another episode was in Flight of the Chum when Andy tried to step in after a seller became frustrated because Rick revealed that their statue was a fake. He stepped in to calm down the situation and was important in the episode. But Andy soon became one of the worst workers in Pawn Stars because he kept on trying to push his limits in the office. He was supposed to be behind the scenes only focusing on security, but he usually fought with Rick over his role and ambition. Andy kept trying to take on jobs beyond just security, which was seen when he was always trying to learn how to negotiate prices and identify real gold. But Rick didn't want to give him any other jobs other than security, which led to a lot of tension between the two of them. Rick wanted to keep him as only a security guard, but Andy didn't want to stay that way. Andy was often seen trying to move up in the hierarchy and not contain himself in his role of a security guard. But usually, Rick had to clearly remind him that he is his employee and not one of the main workers of the pawn shop. But Andy was never removed or demoted from his job and continued to work as a security guard, despite the fact that he was rubbing Rick the wrong way. Although Rick was increasingly unhappy with Andy, the security guard remains a fan favorite. His security detail video got nearly 1 million views. The late Richard Harrison once called Antoine very mellow, but I would not want to cross him at all. According to fans, Andy is still working at the show as if he was fired. It would have been all over the news. Although Antoine isn't a headline-grabbing person, the main problem that he had with Rick Harrison was the fact that he kept trying to push beyond his position. One might say that the problems Rick had with his workers was the fact that he was too controlling. Rick has a poor relationship with his son Corey because he's always trying to control his son in the way he manages the business. He also has issues with his mother because he keeps trying to control her finances, leading to a major scandal. And now, with Andy, he's trying to stop him from doing more in the shop and wants him to only stick with his security work. Which of the Pawn Stars workers do you like the most? And which ones do you dislike? Do you think Rick is being fair, or is he part of the problem too? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.